In communication with Southern California, KHJ-TV Public Affairs presents Teen Talk. Studies show that most student attitudes are influenced by elementary school teachers. There appears to be a connection between high student achievement and high student ratings of teachers. In a recent survey, high school seniors stated that the most important characteristic for an ideal teacher was that he enjoy his work.
According to one study recently completed, the good teacher still remains as a Mr. Chips type. Elderly, doddering, infinitely lovable, and yet somewhat boring. How can that be? I'm a teacher. I'm Joseph Feinstein, and today on Teen Talk, we've invited a panel of today's teachers to see if they fit into the Mr. Chips shoes or into Mr. Chips' bag or whatever. Welcome, panel. Welcome to Teen Talk. Tell me, a few years ago, we had a panel of teens airing their complaints and their appreciations about their teachers. And now it's your turn to strike back and tell us, do you think that today's teens are anything like the days when you were a teenager going to school yourself? Nancy?
Yes and no.
Yes and no.
They certainly look different.
They do.
We would never have been allowed in school looking the way some of them look today, in terms of hairdos and clothes and things like that. But basically underneath, I don't really think they're very different. I think they're still anxious to learn if you make it interesting for them. I think they meet you on a human level if you're human toward them. And I really don't see them as being very different.
Murray, you've been around the schools for 39 years now, and it was a while before you were the teenager then too. Are the kids any different today?
I agree with Nancy. The human material is the same, but the times have changed.
In what sense?
When I was a high school student, we were coming out of the Depression and facing World War II. When I started teaching, we were trying to settle down on the aftermath of World War II. And then, of course, the 50s came along, the 60s, 70s, and 80s. I would say that the most pleasurable time to teach through all that time were the middle and later 50s. And the most miserable time to teach was the late 60s and early 70s. But it wasn't the human material.
It wasn't.
It was the impact of events, of leadership, of the dictum we were being given.
Okay. Drew?
I think that one of the things we need to look at is really the social and the cultural influences that have come about and the pressures created on teenagers now. We're looking at a society that predominantly is single-parent oriented. Most of the kids, I would say probably 3 out of 5, have come from divorced homes. We're looking certainly at a society that is torn apart by the drug culture and all the peer influences on that. So while we're coming with the same human being, we're also coming with a lot of external pressures being exerted on.
Did you know about drugs? Did you know about divorce when you were a kid?
The only thing that I knew about was a six-pack and two, and that was about it.
And none of it was light. It was all heavy stuff.
Right.
The heavy stuff. Danny, you've been around now at school for 20, 25 years now. And
not 25.
Not 25.
He's not Mr. Chips.
What do you notice about the kids today?
Well, an interesting thing happened, you bring it up. I have an 11-year-old who, in passing the other day in the car, was almost matter of fact saying that he may not grow up. And all of a sudden there was talk of the bomb and of annihilation, which he hadn't shared with me up to this point. People have talked about that. The kids, a lot of them, I don't think they think in terms of long-term goals. You know, they sometimes feel that they're on the edge.
We did a show on nuclear war and the Holocaust, and many of those kids go to sleep very frightened.
Yeah.
There is a fright. Greg, you're only 5 years away from your teens, and yet you're teaching right now. What do you see? Do you see anything about the kids now from the perspective of just a few years ago when you were one yourself?
No, I went to a private Catholic school, and even in that school, the students were primarily, for the most part, pretty much the same as they are now. I don't see much difference. I get a lot of students who don't have the motivation that I'd like to see, that I had going to school, but I see, if I reflect on my high school years, there were a lot of students who were not terribly motivated by school.
Is it easier, think, being a kid today? Do you think it's easier being a kid
I don't
today?
think it's easier at all. I think that they have to really develop their capability to think in a highly complex world. That when I was in high school, we didn't think about those things. We just sort of thought about what we would do when we grew up. And now they have to deal with war, and they have to deal with the vastly changed society, and I think it's much more difficult. And I think as teachers, what we need to do is help them develop the capability to think rather than just to put in knowledge, so that they can take that capability and go to this world and use it. I think it's real different.
Cherry, you see them in the library where you work, and what do you see as some of the big differences with the kids today versus when you were a child?
Well, I think your point, Dan, about the concerns about nuclear war and so forth, I think has changed values, definitely. I think there might be more concern for, I think, a kind of a depression, I think, that I feel is more noticeable if and easily discouraged. I think this is a tendency I find. Maybe this was true when I was a kid in the 50s, I'm not sure. It just didn't surface. I don't think it manifested itself the same way. But that was one thing that I don't think I was really aware of teen depression as much as I sense now.
There was an excuse too when we were kids. We were the rebels without a cause, and it was they sort of gave us license. They made a movie. There was a book that had nothing, of course, to do with the movie, but there was a title. There was a persona, and interestingly enough, the persona's coming back through James Dean crazes, and all of a sudden he's sort of right. I mean, so there's certainly rebellion, and I don't know whether they have the cause that we didn't have.
Let's see if we can get behind the scenes and find out how some of these teachers really feel. I want to discuss a few areas with you now that you usually never get discussed. For instance, do you really have some kids that are pets of yours that you really kind of favor over other kids? Greg?
I think almost any teacher would favor a student who's verbal. Part of being a teacher for me is in terms of almost preparing 5 matinees a day, in terms of making it, and I think we agree, making it interesting enough for the student to stay awake, to keep his or her attention. And I really look forward to the individual who is challenged, who is willing to disagree, and is willing to...
Did you find kids that disagreed with you?
Oh, I love them.
Yeah.
If I have a student that always agrees with me, I know there's something wrong. Because typically most students have a difference of opinion, but they typically don't want to tell you what it is until they're sure of how you feel and if you're going to be accepting of their point of view. So as soon as they find out that you're okay, you can separate them from their opinions. It's okay. You get a lot of interesting discussion, a lot of interesting exchange.
Everybody loves you, Nancy. I know that as a fact of
They do.
life at school. Yes, they love you. They love Miss McHugh. Miss McHugh is such a good teacher.
Mrs. Chips, you mean?
Yeah. Did you have any pets at school?
Sure. But I tried, this is one of the paradoxical things. I try so hard not to show it because I'm so concerned about being fair that I think sometimes I don't really let those kids know how much I appreciate them. And I agree with Greg. I appreciate the kids who are alive and alert and thinking and asking questions, even if the questions are sometimes stopping the class or not exactly what I would have wanted at that particular time. But it worries me a little, even now, to think that maybe I didn't stroke a few of those kids enough in terms of giving
I
them
stroke them
feedback.
too. You know what a stroke? It's a
No, we
little
don't do
hard.
that.
No, we don't do hard strokes. Did you favor some of the kids over others?
I like the bad kids. I mean, I used to run kind of an informal classroom, and so the kind of kids that were in many classes in trouble would come into my classes in interpersonal relations or marriage and family, and they could have a chance to talk about what was really going on with them. And they really weren't real bad kids. They were just kids that weren't fitting the mold in some places. So I like those kind of kids.
It's easy enough. I know, 29 years I've been doing this. I've been on the battlefront too, when I'm not in front of the camera. But the thing that I'm really concerned about is that we really treat the great kids a lot easier and a lot gentler than we'll short shrift the pain in the neck. Yeah. You're out there with the PE classes, and those kids better buckle down or else. Do you give them hell, Harry, or what?
My philosophy has always been that I don't hide anything, and I think that one of the mistakes that we make as teachers is we don't present a real-life situation. And in real life, you're going to find situations where you like certain people better than you do others. I've never made any, I've never hidden the fact that there are certain students that I like better than others. My high school coach was the one that more or less, as a role model, John Farhood, directed me into physical education and into teaching. And I've told him numerous times that I appreciate it, and I've had students come back and tell me, and that's because they've been pets and I've taken them under my wing. And I think that's a realistic life situation.
In 39 years, Murray, you certainly must have met up with some really obtrusive pains in the neck. What do you do when those kinds of things happen?
Well, I've tried to develop a grading system which hopefully excludes both the things under discussion. The obnoxious student in terms of reform and the appearance of having a pet. And hopefully, at least the appearance of it, I've licked. I don't know. But really, in 39 years of teaching, I've only met one mean student.
One mean student?
One mean student.
I want to hear about this kid.
It was the very first day I was teaching in the LA system.
Really?
And,
But you got rid of it 39 years ago. I still have some days to look forward to.
He leaned over the desk. I was teaching the teacher's cafeteria. And he was trying to recruit a timid fella into his gang, and he was beating him over the face. And I rushed over there, pushed him apart, grabbed this kid, and really shoved him. And he turned around with a clenched fist toward my head, grabbed him, ripped him around, booted him over the VP. This is in 48 when we had power. And told him.
This is in 48 when you had power.
I said, he took a swing at me, either he leaves or I do. And he left. And since that day, I've never had a mean kid.
Holy cow. You're only 5 years away from the time when you were a kid. And now you're in the classroom, and I can remember those first days in the classroom, and boy, was I scared. And did I set up rules all over the chalkboard with what they could do and what they couldn't do? Have you done that, Greg?
Oh, my first semester was a disaster, but you learn techniques. You learn techniques to get the kids quiet.
What's the techniques?
You try to ignore the bad students. What I typically do the first few weeks of class is that I'm a very solemn person. I don't smile too much. The classroom is typically much quieter.
If it's a math class, I can understand why.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So it's a technique you use. I don't like to use the techniques. I like to be a lot more personal with my students. But if you don't employ those techniques early, it gets out of hand, and that's what happened my first semester.
Well, in the library, everything is supposed to be very solemn also, very quiet and solemn, and I'm sure that you've met with your mess of young people who are not observant of those rules of silence.
I need I have to put that stereotype aside right now before you think that all libraries are like tombs, Joe, because really they aren't, and ours is hardly that. If kids are busy working, there's going to be a certain amount of noise, and it's good noise. I don't mean parties, but I mean, I'm aware that they're working, and there's a certain amount of low conversation, and this is fine. I can remember what my high school days were like in my high school library. I think some of you all remember somewhere in the back of your mind there was a library that was, if an entire shelf fell over, the librarian would come over and look at the person under it and say, shh. Yeah. And, this doesn't happen now. It's good, and I think that's a sign of good change, I would say.
I have had as a teacher many memorable moments. In my deaf and living class one day, we had a visit by the grandparents who came to see us, and one of the grandparents lost her husband like 3 months before, and the kid invited her to be there as part of her experience. And she came in, she sat down with the kids started talking, and I started a dialogue between the kids and the grandparents of what's going on and how, what's it like to be older in years and so forth. And all of a sudden I noticed one of the girls in the corner, this girl Debbie, was crying. And I turned to Debbie and I said, "What's wrong?" And she said, "Oh, I'm really sad because my grandmother isn't here today. She died a couple of years ago." And with that, she started sobbing even more. And this grandmother got up and walked clear across the other end of the room and put her arms around her and embraced her. And so the two of them were kind of standing and crying together. And then all of a sudden, another girl cried, and another grandparent got up. And before long, we had the whole room in this embracing, this warmth and this love that was coming through. It was a marvelous moment in my classes. And I'm wondering, what special experiences or classes have you had that you can remember with fond remembrance? Danny?
I have nothing to beat that story.
Yeah.
That's a warm story. We were talking in the first place about how kids have changed. When I was first starting out, there was a lot of self-motivation. And I was taken out of the classroom for 10 or 15 minutes because of something that went on down the hall. And I came back and there was a student who was conducting the class, not necessarily what I was going to do, but something that he wanted to do. And he was reciting I Sing of Olaf by E. Cummings and giving an annotated critique. The class was silent, involved, attention was being paid not only to the kid, but also to the words of the poem. It was marvelous. And I realized at that moment that the kids do a marvelous job on their own.
Sometimes they really don't need you as much
they
as
didn't need me at all.
they didn't need you at all.
They were wonderful.
You had an experience in class?
Yeah, Joe, over many years of teaching, I've had hundreds of fulfilling moments, but the one that always lives in my memory was years ago at Franklin High School when I was journalism advisor. I had a student who entered in the 10th grade, and his whole dream was to be sports editor. And he worked his way up the staff, and finally in his senior year, he made it. At the same time, I was informed by the health coordinator that they had discovered terminal bone cancer in him. And you could tell it by looking at him because he had begun to lose weight, he was pale. And I went up to him and I said to him, I said, "You know, you've earned enough to get an A for this semester. So if you feel you have to go home, please do so, and you will get your grade and you will graduate." He says, "No, I took on this responsibility. I'm going to see it to the end." And he did. He didn't quite make it. He died before the end of the year. But the most marvelous thing about it was the way the entire staff rallied around him, helped him meet his deadlines, helped him do his copy, lay out his pages, when he was literally laying on a desk, unable to finish a day's work. And I always think of that young man with his great courage, but also the other staff members with their great humanity. And to me, it's always been an inspiration, Joe.
I see some water in your eyes, too.
Yeah, I never forget it.
I know. I had a Stacy who decided in those last days when she was terminally ill and out of remission not to wear her cap anymore. And she decided to take off her cap and show her balding head to the whole student body and wear that as a badge of honor and a realization that this too was the way she was. And she too died very soon thereafter while in school. And I can remember the pathos, the love that so many people felt for this wonderful, wonderful young lady. She was really something.
I remember her. She was a wonderful human being.
Were there other special students that you guys have had?
I feel very fortunate having coached for 15 years. A lot of times coaches are able to get a lot closer to students than teachers in a classroom situation. And there have been a number of situations over the year, just the camaraderie and everything with the students, and having former players come back and swimmers, both boys and girls, up to the house and come back. One particular stands out, a former quarterback who's now at New Mexico, Ned James, started with us as a scrawny little kid who must have weighed about 110 pounds and went on to be an all-city player and is the current quarterback for New Mexico, and to see somebody flower and really make the most of his abilities is really a neat thing for a teacher. And he comes back and calls collect, and always tells me this is going on, and he keeps me informed. But those kind of things really are what make teaching a really neat profession.
Well, and at the same time, I'm aware that on our panel are two people who decided to leave the profession. And I know that you were a wonderful teacher, Nathalie. I would imagine you were a great teacher, Greg. Why did you leave?
As students have the opportunity to change in terms of being able to take different levels of classes and whatever, I felt I had a need to use some skills I hadn't used in a long time, to use them following some of my students who just graduated in 1985, to follow them to State University at Northridge, and seeing some of the same students there doing somewhat the same thing, but working as a counselor, doing somewhat slightly different, certain different responsibilities.
If you had to do it all over again, how long you been teaching now, Nancy?
This is my 29th year.
Me too. This is my 29th year.
We can't compete with Murray.
No,
39.
Murray's
I'm so much older than everybody.
I figure we
so
get a
much
CHIPS
younger.
award.
So much younger, Murray. That's what you really are. Would you do it again?
You bet.
Why?
I think it's the most satisfying job you can have because you get a chance to grow along with the kids. And as long as you keep growing, I think then you have a chance to be successful with them.
This is my 29th year of teaching, and I'm constantly amazed that the joys and delights remain ever constant. Sure, I'm tired, as anyone would be after 29 years of doing anything, but I'm also exhilarated when I hear from former students. I've been honked at on the freeway. I've received a telephone call from New York from a former student, and a policeman, another former student, screeched to a stop in front of my car to proudly get out and show me his badge. I have thousands of these memories, enough to last for a lifetime. I've really loved my job. I want to thank you, panel, for coming here and to being here with us today and sharing some of your insights and joys of teaching. It's a wonderful profession, and I hope a lot of people go into it. This is Joseph Feinstein for Teen Talk saying we will see you very, very